Oh my gosh, Jacqy, I am so excited for us to lead into this conversation because A, we don't even know where it's going to go, which is even way more fun and totally our jam. But B, I know the consistency of the energy you've been moving through lately. And I know that the gift you bring to the world is going to be a potent delivery of messages. So I just can't wait to dive into this with you.
Yay! I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Me too. Me too. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's lead with the question I always come out of the gate with when I'm interviewing guests on my podcast. What does light warrior mean to you?
Light warrior is really learning how to stand wholeheartedly in your truth,
Hmm.
in what resonates with you, in moving forward with that, regardless of anyone else's views around you, and from a place of love, right?
Hmm.
That I always talk about. Sometimes we call it ruthless compassion, but this idea that, I'm going to lead from a place of love, and no matter what comes at me, I'm delivering my message. I'm sharing whatever it is and overcoming whatever obstacles show up in my path, because there's a bigger picture, purpose, mission in all of it, and really being able to align myself in that light for a much bigger purpose.
Hmm. I love this. And I think that this is like almost a lot of the challenges that we're facing right now in the world. Like we're being put up against these obstacles that want our love to be diminished, that want us to not step into compassion for everyone, that's creating this conflict of duality that's been heightened in the world right now, where there's like a clear line between value systems and people can't even come together in the middle of these value systems to be able to step in. And I know that you're seeing this, and I know you do a lot of work inside of this with the work you do in the collective and the energy moving through. And don't even worry about Tony. She she's gonna play whatever role in this she's gonna play.
Yep.
Jacky's cat for those listening on podcast.
She's a disruptor energy as well sometimes.
She definitely is. She definitely is. So we're seeing this move through, and I know that like lately you've been through your own duality movement, and I don't know if you want to speak to anything that you've been working within over the last little while that may be able to serve some people listening today.
So I've had and well, yeah, I'm going to share that I've just come out of what I deem to be my third dark night of the soul.
Yeah, and explain what a dark night of the soul is, in case people don't know what that means.
So my definition of it, because I'm sure
Mhm.
there's plenty out there, but my definition of it is where everything in the world and in your, like, my internal world and in my external world begins to crumble.
Mhm.
Begin Things start to fall away, things no longer make sense, things that are not of truth start to surface. It left me in a place of questioning everything, the people in my life, the things I had been taught, the belief systems that I had. And it's about, it takes you into this place of shadow or of darkness where you can really start to feel into what in all of this makes sense for me now. And
Mhm.
so I went through a period of about 2 months where I felt completely lost.
Mhm.
Like I was just walking around in a barren wasteland, having absolutely no idea where to go, what to do, what was truth, who to trust, all of those things, in order for me to be able to really start to dive deeper into my truth, my
Yeah.
soul. Because for so long, I had based everything on what other people told me I was meant to do. I
Mhm.
lived in these boxes of expectation based on what my mother thought I should be and what my mentor said I should be, and what my friends expected of me, and people would put me up on pedestals, and then I would attempt to somehow stay up there, even though I did not ask to be put there in the first place,
Yeah.
right? But you're trying to, it's this big balancing act. And suddenly, when I was going down a path that was not the path that was aligned for me, the universe came in and went, "Girl, stop."
Yeah. Or just
And
took you right out.
Like, and honestly, and you and I chatted a lot during this time period, and it really, like, it just feels like you get cloaked in this darkness,
Yeah.
and it's different than just depression,
Hmm.
right? Like, I've experienced depression in my past. It's part of my history, and it's different than that. It was like I couldn't see past the end of my own nose,
Mm.
and I literally just stopped caring about everything.
Yeah.
And it needed to happen. And, for anybody who's out there listening, when the chaos comes and the drama comes, and you really don't know why you're getting hit left, right, and center,
Hmm.
right? And it seems like no matter what you're doing, you are literally destroying everything around you.
Yeah.
That is a dark night of the soul.
And you know what? I've been through multiple dark nights of the soul. Not knowing what they were at first when I first went through like the spiritual ascension side, and when I first started waking up, like it'll be 14 years this year that I worked with my first spiritual mentor. So like 14 years ago, Colleen, not
Yeah.
knowing why, just being inclined to say yes and stepped into that space, right? And started moving stuff through. And it's just interesting to see as we grow and expand and up level, we need to go into the dark to find our truth, right? And we have to go through the shadow to illuminate the light. And sometimes this is the part where most people are so scared to drop in because they're scared of their own fear. They're scared of what they're going to find. They're scared, like, and the word fear is like a big thing. So they don't go all the way in. And when you don't go all the way in, like we've obviously seen in your life, but also in mine, then it keeps bubbling up and bubbling up and bubbling up until we get fucking whacked out and everything gets dismantled. And we're now in this destruction. And now we're like, okay, now I get you. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now what? It's funny because the first time I went through this, it was about 8 years ago when
Mm.
I really started diving into my spiritual journey. I bopped around for years
Yeah.
just looking for something. But I remember the first time this happened, and I had been crying for months,
Mm.
daily for months,
Yeah.
right? And having no idea what was happening to me at that time, or where I was being guided, or why I was having to go through this. And it really, you know, knowing what I know now, it's all happening for you. And
Mm-hmm.
people hear and say this all the time, and we sort of, some people I think it's cliche, but it's happening for you so that you can fully step in to the lane that you're meant to be in.
Yeah. It's so true. Go ahead. Yeah. What?
And it's not comfortable, and it's not nice, and it's there were days where I had thoughts that I was like, I'm just done. I don't
Yeah.
want to be here no more. I don't want to move through this any longer. And it took me surrendering to it, like
Mm.
fully at the bottom of my soul, literally looking up and going, okay, I'm done. I don't know how to do this on my own anymore.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know what to do. I don't know where to move. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be doing. I need help. And
Mm-hmm.
I literally said the words out loud: I surrender.
Yeah.
Show me where to go, what to do. How am I meant to heal this?
Yeah.
And then you and I
Yeah.
had a conversation like the next day, and I suddenly, all of these things started aligning for me. And that's the key piece,
Mm-hmm.
is you've got to be ready to face that fear. And that I mean, people have been telling me for ages that I'm powerful,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and I was terrified of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether this has to do with my soul remembering past lives, karma things, all of that, but I was terrified that if I fully stepped into my power, what would I do with it? And I think part of that has to do with my relationship with my shadow self,
Mm-hmm.
right? Those parts of you that you don't want to talk to about other people, the parts of you that you're not overly happy with or want to fully own. And so I didn't own my power, because if I owned my power, that meant I had to own all the rest of it. I had to
Yeah.
own all the dynamics in my shadow, and not, I couldn't just go on living with my, as my friends would say, rose colored glasses, who found the light and love in everything and wanted to completely ignore and avoid actually dealing with any of the darkness or shadow parts inside of me.
Yeah, and it's definitely interesting. And this is, I think, the part, like the real like ascension energy, we'll call it. And I'm not a big fan of the word ascension because I really like the word remember because it's already in us. We don't have to ascend into anything. We just need to remember all the pieces and move through that remembering. So, but that's the key piece is like we all have this duality within us because we are birthed on earth in this duality experience. So we all have light and we all have the dark, and it's just a matter of whether we tune the dark up and move it through the shadow, which is a different energy. Because in the dark, we have power. We have our divine boldness. We have, for me, the rebellion. And I know you have a similar energy when you move into the darkness inside of this space as well. But it's when we hide and kowtow and like fear those sides of us that we start to then create shadow in our fields, because we then start to create addictions and we move into like the addictive behavior or self-sabotaging behavior or all the other things that are more destructive than they are in alignment. And the way that we work is that we need to, in order for us to embody the light and fully step into the light, we need to go into the dark and we need to go shine the light on it and find it and not be afraid of moving through those passageways inside of ourselves, for sure.
Yeah, what I really learned during this process was that a lot of this fear around my darkness or my shadow, or the duality within me, was created in my own head.
Mm-hmm.
Right, it was the idea of what I thought it meant,
Mm.
and what I thought it meant and what it really was were two completely different things. Because when we go into that dark space and, like you said, shine the light on it, it's not actually as terrifying as you think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was able to do that, that is literally the moment that I was able to step fully into my power.
Right.
Now, for 41 years of my life, I had been a perpetual people pleaser. I couldn't say no to anyone. I put everyone else around me first. I was like, let's just shine love and light out into the world and everything will be okay. Right? I was your angry, nice girl. I didn't express my anger, but I got angry because I'm human, just like everyone else, but I couldn't speak it. I couldn't express it. I didn't want to ruffle feathers. I
Mm-hmm.
needed to keep everything calm. And then suddenly I started embracing things like the fact that I'm loud,
Mm-hmm.
and we refuse to have people tell me to shush anymore. That, I want to be bold, that that's part of who I am, that I have a vibrant energy about me that I know people feel, but I never owned.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was able to step in and own it, everything started to shift. The dynamics and relationships around me started to shift. The energy that I stepped into, even when I put it on my social media, and the messages that I was able to share that came like coursing through me, shifted
Yep.
to the point that people were like, I don't know what you're doing, but there's something coming off of this, right? And I didn't even know what I was doing, other than I made a decision to step in and own my power.
Yes. Love it. I love it. And that is like one decision that I think there's a lot of people that fear. And like you just said, like you had to really work through that and not take like, and we love the people in our life and we appreciate you. We thank you for being in our world. But our society has been conditioned to diminish people. And whether you think that or not, by someone telling Jacqy to shush and not be so loud, or for someone saying you shouldn't be wearing those clothes, or how can you say fuck in your posts, or all the things that are coming up that people are looking at us from this diminishment, trying to keep us in a box when there is no fucking boxes, right? The
Yes.
controlled government and infrastructures and all the people out there that want us to stay small and in our line as lemmings created these boxes to keep us within. And then our parents taught us the box, and then we taught our kids the box, and
Yep.
because we just didn't know any better. But the boxes are now being collapsed all around us, where the second we collapse that box and we fully step in And maybe we never fully will for a while, but if we own another piece of us and then another piece of us and then another piece of us, then we start to open up those pieces where people go, wow, what are you up to these days? Wow, your content's amazing. And wow, you're actually showing up on social media finally to see you, right, Jacqy?
Yeah, yeah.
Where the fuck have you been? Just been hiding under my little rock.
Well, and that's it. It's the hiding, and you think you're hiding from the world. Like I think I honestly thought I was hiding from
Mm.
the world. I wasn't hiding from the world. I was hiding from myself.
Yes.
And I was hiding from the expectations because it became too much. And when you talk about addictions, I mean, I will own it.
Mm.
I was a functioning alcoholic for years,
Yeah.
right? I was able to put on the mask when I worked as a teacher. You know, I would go to school and I would kick ass and I would show up and I knew how to shelf my shit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Keep it over here. You deal with it when you come home.
Yep.
But I wasn't in my door more than 5 minutes before I had poured myself a glass of wine and probably finished the bottle
Yep.
that night.
Mm-hmm.
And we can add other layers of other things that I have done to distract myself, to hide from it, to not feel it, to not own any of it. And
Yep.
it was all done in secret.
I get you.
Nobody knew,
Yeah.
right? And so the person I showed to the outside world was this, you know, I was labeled, called gregarious and, you know, fun loving and an extrovert, and I loved people and I loved parties and I loved all of that.
Yeah.
But when I came home and it was just me,
Yeah.
I was miserable and lost.
Mm.
And a lot of that came from, you know, being a perfectionist. I say my soul was an overachiever before I even came down here, right? And this need to please everyone,
Yeah.
to be the best teacher, to be the best daughter, to be the best friend, to be all of these things, which didn't honor me.
Yeah. So powerful. And I've been down numerous rabbit holes. Like I used to use alcohol to diminish my intuition and to not actually feel the things I was really feeling. So I use it as a crutch, especially when I look back in like my early 20s, to not be who I really was. So you want me to be this? I could be the party girl animal. I could come out here and do this with you. I could, and all of that. And I was great at it. And most people would tell me that I'm an extrovert. I am not. I am an introvert. Like I am fully an introvert, and you see it more dominantly now that I live in Costa Rica. And like even a couple friends of mine were like, we don't understand how you can spend so much time alone. And I was like, I fucking love being alone. But there's times where like I could down a bottle of wine easily in a night. Like, and I can even go 2 bottles and still be functioning. Could I drive? No. And would I ever try to? No. But
Yeah.
I could still talk and have conversations with people and be in that space of that. But I also know that my next levels require me to purge into this new purity of energy, and I can't hold both. And I've been
Yes.
in this mind fuck lately over the last few months about really releasing that whole entire past. And like every single time, like I could move into a certain field and I'd be like, dude, this isn't the right field you're in. I'm like, but I kind of like this field over here. And like, but we all go through this. We all go with whatever it is, whether it's sexual expression, whether it's, texting your ex in the middle of the night and fucking around with him on text messages, or whether it's drinking, or whether it's, smoking pot every single day of the week for like 2 weeks, 1 week on end. Am I cutting in and out? I hope not. I think I'm okay. Am I good on your side?
I can still hear you.
Okay, good. Because it just said my internet's unstable. And I was like, of course it's unstable because the fucking message I'm pushing into the world right now is fucking potent. All right.
I
But
was just busy moving a little energy around that.
yeah, good. You move the energy through. But it's that's the thing, right? And we all have this, let's say, crutch that keeps us moving in this limitation that is
Yes.
not meant to happen any longer. We're at this point in the collective where we're getting a choice, and we get to choose now whether we step in and move through and trust and surrender and have courage, just like all the things you went through over the last few months, or we can stay stagnant over here in the fucking chaos, because it's only going to get worse if we do
Yes.
not move through.
Well, and I think it's important, like, as to talk about that as you step in and start to own both parts of your duality.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there are certain things in me that I like to go and you and I have talked about this,
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually a lot more comfortable in my darkness
Mm-hmm.
than I ever would have admitted prior to the last few months.
Yeah.
And there is a time and place,
Yes, of
right?
course.
But the difference is now I can make a conscious choice
Yeah.
and go, I'm going to go play for the night.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to do all the things I need to do in and around that to protect my energy and to clear it through and to do all of those things. But it's done with intention
Yeah.
versus before where I felt it controlled me. Like I couldn't get
Mm-hmm.
out of the cycle of hiding.
Yeah.
And now it's not about hiding.
Yeah.
It's about living my pure expression and honoring that part of me that desires that once in a while.
Yeah.
And it's once in a while. It's
Mm-hmm.
not every night. It's
Yeah.
not, right. It's there's a time and a space and a different purity to that experience.
Yes. And so many awesome points in there. It's like it's a calculated decision that we make. And when we calculate that decision and it thrives within us, we put up the infrastructures to protect us. And but it's not in a detriment anymore. It's not in the self-sabotaging energy any longer. It's not in the fuck you world, I'm doing it anyways energy. It's like
Yes.
I embody this. I am
Yes.
this. I embrace this part of me and I'm going to own it fully.
Yes.
There's part of me that I've been expressing openly online about the diversity within my, like, say, sexuality. And I hold space for that. And will I always be so open about it? Yeah, I think I will be, because it's part of who I really am. But with the guy that's dropping into my field soon, I'll be like, look, like these are the desires that I have. And I no longer wish to diminish my desires because of the fact that I, just like you said, should be this nice girl, or sex should be like this and that. And I've had good sex. Okay. I really have. But have I had the mind blowing, amazing, great sex that I desire? No, because I also didn't let it come into my field, because I put it into this box saying, this is what Colleen over here would desire in this, conformity of her energy and the woman in her and whatever.
Yes.
And now I'm like, fucking rights, we're going there. And if you can't keep up, you're not my guy. Like, like, and holding that space. I told you these podcasts go everywhere, like,
Everywhere.
yeah, but
You know,
that's the part, right? Go ahead. Yeah, please.
I was going to say it's really interesting. I want to remind everybody that this is a journey. And like
Mm-hmm.
you've been on it longer than I have, but like even in terms of stepping into that, I remember last year when we were doing a program together and this idea started to come up in my field, right? Like into my awareness about desiring other things, but that doesn't mean I was immediately comfortable with any of it.
Of course.
Right? It was just this recognition that there was something inside of me that was desiring something more than what I had. But it doesn't mean that I had the words or the language or the even knowing yet of what exactly that was. And this is where we get to get curious. And
Mm-hmm.
we get, it's important that if you want to get curious, that you're doing it in a safe space
Yeah.
where, I mean, that's for me, that was the first part of it was whoever it's with, it needs to be safe.
Yeah.
I need to feel like I can let go of those inhibitions, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
again, I was raised to be a very good girl
Yeah.
in a religion where you don't behave this way. This is unacceptable behavior. And so there's the part of me that's like, but we want this, we want to play, we want to, push outside the boundaries. And I've
Yeah.
always been someone who walked along the boundaries, but the boxes always pulled me back.
Mm.
Right? Those expectations. I'm very grateful for the morals and values I was raised with.
Yeah.
And yet there's still a part of me from time to time that wants to push those boundaries. Do I know how yet? Not always,
No.
right? But it's about getting curious and allowing yourself to let go and
Mm-hmm.
see where you end up,
Yeah.
right? We can always pivot. If we try something and we're like, nope, nope, that did not align with me.
Yeah.
I'm
Thank you.
good.
Yeah,
Right? Experience not going there again,
yeah.
right? But then, then you come across these ones where you're like, that felt good,
Yeah.
right? That gave me something, some energy. I felt alive. I felt vibrant and bold and courageous and all of that, and whatever the experience is, whether we're talking about sex or whether we're talking about, I have no desire to jump out of a plane, but maybe for some people that's it, right? Whatever it is that you desire.
Yeah.
But until we start to get curious and we
Mm.
start to lean in and we start to give ourselves those opportunities to push our comfort zones and to try new things,
Yeah.
you're never going to learn what it is that really fuels your soul.
And yeah, I love this because it's so true. Like we don't, and sometimes we would jump in with this like fuck everybody, I'm going to do it anyways energy, which then we actually didn't really learn about who we were through the experience because we were doing it from a reprimanded or like a rebellion energy, and not in a way of like purely rebellion in the light, but in a way of like detrimental rebellion, right? Whereas when we step in and start to ask questions and get curious and start to explore and open up ourselves to own that, because we all have had whispers dropping
Mhm.
in. We all have had a desire moving through us, and some of us have leaned into our desires and others of us have diminished them because of, like you said, how you grew up and the value system you grew up within. And like we didn't talk about sex in my house, like it was never a
No.
conversation we talked about. So when I started leaning in, like at 15 years old, I asked my mom, I wanted to go on birth control. And she's like, why? And I'm like, because I want to have, like, I want to go have sex and start like exploring. And she was like, what the fuck? You're not. And then obviously, then I found someone to take me to go get birth control that
Yep.
honored my choice. And I did it behind her back because I was craving that. Now, granted, now I obviously am going to teach my children about not birth control and doing it in different ways and holding space and understanding the body and using the purity of nature and all the
Yep.
things that I'm leaned into now. But at 15 years old, like 26 years ago, Colleen, that was the knowledge she had, right? And then it became a rebellion thing, and then it became I hid from it, and then it became a secret to do this, so then it was always forbidden. So then it brought in a different energy when we embrace it and we step into this and we walk ourselves through an experience or we talk it through it, then we actually have more openness to it, and then we can express ourselves even more. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the key part is the expression,
Yeah.
whether it's what we're saying via our throats and our voices, or whether it's something we're expressing in a physical way, whether it's dance or sex or, adventure. It's a form of expression. And the more we can start to align with what our soul desires from this experience, because
Mm-hmm.
it's all linked to what we came here to learn.
Yeah.
And part of that is about fully stepping in and figuring out what is truth for you, what aligns with you, what fuels you,
Yeah.
right? Not anyone else.
Yeah. And we've like so many of, and I used to wear this pattern a lot. What will ever people think of me?
Yeah.
All the time I used to wear that pattern. And I broke it down subtly for years, like 13, 14 years ago when I started working with my spiritual mentor. It was like I had permission to release my masks. And she even said to me one time, and I worked with her for 5 years. So like once a month for 5 years, and 1 year out of that five, I worked with her every week. And I went to see her. So it was in person, right? So like back then, that's what you did. Like Zoom wasn't
Yeah.
even a thing, but I think we had GoToMeeting or something, but it was so rare that somebody would have it, and it cost so much a month to use it. Like it was just
Yep.
crazy, right? But it was like I learned that the masks I thought that I needed to wear didn't need to be there, that I could actually be myself. And it took me though, like even up until last year where I fully started embodying all of the dimensions to me,
Yeah.
um, that long, and one mask came off and then another mask came off, and then another mask came off. And then it was like, do you have an opinion about this? Where the old Colleen would be like, no, everything's good. Like you just do you. Where I'd be like, fuck yeah, now I have an opinion about this. Like I just
Yes.
refuse to diminish myself in this space now moving forward. And it was like this starting and this collective of movement that we get to move through. So it's just interesting.
Yeah. It's really about learning to honor you. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I think that's and being okay with taking up space
Mm.
and being okay with expressing yourself and understanding that some people are going to lean in
Yeah.
and some people aren't going to like it and they're going to leave, and
Yeah.
that's okay,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if there's one thing, at one point, and I know you've told this story too, and I think a lot of us have this experience as we step into living a more aligned life, is that, there was one point in my life when I was not far into my journey, but a little bit into my journey, was really starting to step more in, that people who had been toxic, people who, friendships that I'd had for years,
Mhm.
started to fall away, and I was left with very few people in my circle.
Yeah.
And I went from a girl who, when I lived in England, I had a huge network of people around me, like a huge community, and then suddenly there was very few. And yet the more you follow this path, the people who are aligned with you, that will get you, that, I always thought growing up I was the weird kid. And I experienced a lot of bullying because I would talk about the fact I experienced deja vus, or I would share things I knew, which I shouldn't have known, or people were like, how do you know that? And that led to a lot of bullying and me being labeled as weird or crazy. And then I spent the next part of my life, most of my childhood into my university years, just wanting to fit in, just
Mhm.
wanting, I didn't want to be the odd one out. And so you bend and you conform, and you become, I guess, almost like a chameleon of, I'll be whoever you need me to be in this space.
Yep.
And because I didn't know or hadn't met anybody who was weird with me, right?
Mhm.
Who got that crazy stuff, who had the same experiences of being claircognizant, who experienced deja vus, who, all of that. I remember my dad saying to me when I was a kid, and I'd come home and I would, tell him about what was happening at school, and like, I don't understand why people are behaving this way. And I would go on and on. He'd go, Jacqueline, you are wise beyond your years. Well, let me tell you, it took me 40 years, well, not quite 40, close to 30, 35 years to actually understand what that meant.
Right.
I was like, how do I deal with this? But now, I get it. And having a tribe, an amazing tribe around me who also plays with energy, and, you know, when I learned about dragons and all of this stuff, right? That we can talk to and have these conversations and go diving down the rabbit hole of all things fabulous universe and timelines and all of these things that the average person would go, you guys have, I've
Fucking
lost your rock off
crazy.
your rockers.
Yeah. We
Which,
are.
20 years ago, I probably would have said that too, because I had veiled it all down. I had refused to acknowledge any of the gifts or um, the gifts, how spiritual I was, my connection, all of that. It was too
Yeah.
much. I hid from it.
Yeah. And this is a pivotal thing too. And we're really seeing now, like, as we awaken to our gifts and as we own them and start to move within them and start to own that power within us, the relationships we used to have in our life may not coincide with this next level of energy, but it doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Right.
No.
So, and the more like for a long time, I had my spiritual mentor and my ex-boyfriend at the time, he was my boyfriend, and they were the only two I talked to about some of the crazy stuff. And I didn't even go into all the crazy stuff. Like now he can't even hold an energetic capacity to understand anything I have to say in connection with the level of channeling or how we moved to the planet, like how Roxy and I went to the planet where the dragons were to save the dragons and then took them back to their home planet. Like, are you kidding me? He'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like he has no reference point. Where there was a certain time in my life where I said, I need more friends and people in my world that I can be myself with fully without having to cap any of the energy, without having to pretend to be something that I'm not, that I can say to them. I just telepathically communicated with that iguana to find out what he was thinking about today. Or, yeah, in a meditation last night, I led people through getting their golden light dragon body. Like, what the fuck, right? Like, it's just like these things, and people look at me like, you're nuts. And I'm like, I'm just going to keep owning my nuts, because in my nuts is the truth of who I am to bring to this world. And whether you ever believe in my nut factory or not, or you choose to bite in at any time, it's not my job. My job is to just keep being me. And those that are inclined to be in my field with me and in this space with me now will come, and they'll be drawn, and we'll create together, and collectives are showing up. in this capacity, more people. Like, I don't even know. Like, there's one of my clients, and I don't go with him totally in depth of that, but I've been working with him for 5 years in a very blue collar business model. And I got brought in to help him grow and scale and hire his people. And he now is like, Colleen, I believe in all the spiritual stuff. And I went, what? After 5 fucking years, you finally told me this? But we don't go into all of it, like all the things where I'm like, oh yeah, well, I went to like Isis's like planet and like we initiated, someone back into their Egyptian lineage. Like, I don't do all that kind of stuff, but enough that he agrees with my crazy. So, and
Yes.
I just say, good, like as long as you can respect my crazy, we can keep working together. Because if you diminished my crazy, or I had to diminish myself in my crazy, quote unquote, for you, it wouldn't serve either of us, right?
Well, and I think there's value in, so the key being you got to own it,
Yeah.
right? And it's when you are ready to fully own you, then that's when you start to magnetize, because you're putting that energy out there. You start to magnetize like-minded, similar energies to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that, because it's similar when I go home and I spend time with my family, right? And they're all very involved in a religion. So some of the things, when I talk about playing with dragons and having protection teams and clearing protocols and things like that, they're like, why are you not just sitting down praying? Right. And that's their way of doing it. And that aligns with them. And that's fantastic. But for me, there's more to it than that. And yet we can have conversations about it. And funny enough, my mom always said, right, like, I went one way, I'm the black sheep of the family, and my sister went the other way, and she like is more devout in the faith than my parents even were, how we were even raised,
Yeah.
right? While she's raising her family, my mom always goes, can you two just come back closer to the middle, right? But there's a reason why we've gone completely opposite paths, and the church serves my sister.
Mm.
And the interesting thing was, over Christmas, when I sat down to start having a conversation with her about some of the stuff that I was experiencing, expecting her to shut it down,
Yeah.
right? Like, I wasn't sure how deep or how far I could go in this conversation with her. And suddenly, when we come from this place of truth, and it was truth for me, and I owned it, and I said to her, you may not agree with some of the things that I'm saying or I'm experiencing and this and that. I was shocked when suddenly we were having a conversation, yes, coming from different levels, but she's like, do you know how many times things like this show up in the Bible? Right. And it really all has to do with how you're reading it.
Yeah.
Right. And all of this war of duality, right, exists in the Bible over and over and over again. I remember my mom saying to me once, why is there so much, there's a lot of war and killing and murder and all of that in the Bible, right? And you think, well, this should all be pure love and light. No, because that's not reality, right? But I want people to hear that, if you can stand in your truth from a space of holding space for yourself, holding space for the person you're having a conversation with, and respecting where each other is coming from. You don't have to be right or wrong. You'll be surprised at how people may respond to you when you're speaking it from your soul truth, when you're really honoring it, because they feel that energy and they'll go, there might be something to this.
Mm-hmm. I love this. And I was just trying to get my air conditioner to turn on. So like in case you're like those watching the video on YouTube, that's what's going on. I'm sweating as fuck right now. Like it's just super sweaty here. Like I just
There's,
like can't handle it. Lots of energy moving through right now, right?
I feel the fire energy moving
Yeah.
through.
I'm like, whew, like I'm like normally I can go a whole podcast without putting the air on because it changes the distortion of the audio. So I apologize for all of those listening to my podcast where it comes through with the air conditioner on, but I am so hot right now holding space. But you made it like such potent points inside of there. There's a universal truth that runs through the energy of the collective, a universal truth. It is the truth of the earth, of the dimensions, of love, of divine love, of all of it. And then each of us has our own truth. So we sit in our own, let's say, podiums, seeing the truth through our own eyes. And my truth may look different than your truth. However, there's that universal truth that always moves through. So whether I see it or hear it from the Bible, or I see it and hear it from ISIS, it's still the same message in a different vibration coming in at a frequency to help serve wherever you are in the vibrational alignment. So whether it's religion and you reading a Bible and going to Sunday school and studying the Bible and honoring the Bible and living and breathing by the Bible, or it's over here on this other side of spirituality and tapping in and having meditations with Yeshua, also known as Jesus, and asking him questions and channeling into Mary Magdalene's quantum abilities. There's two truths, but yet they're the same truth if they're aligned in a certain energy field, which it's interesting for you, right? Like you grew up in a very religious background and now you use spirituality in your world. And there's probably some points that you still lead back into using God energy in some way, shape, or form. But I just love for you to speak to whatever that feels right, because it's come up a couple times in our conversation today. So I think it's cool.
So from the time I was very little, like I know I was born awake.
Yeah.
Right. And people are going through awakenings, but I knew from the time I was very little that there was something else out there, that there was a power and force that was way stronger than me. Yeah. Right. And so in my religion, we called it Heavenly Father, and we had what they call the Holy Ghost, which is your little, Jiminy Cricket, my little, my intuition, that still small voice that speaks to you. And I had a lot of experiences growing up where, I would get those full body tingles, and things would come out of my mouth and I would be like, that's not me saying that. Right. And how do you know these things? And all of this. And yet in the experience, I mean, I dipped back and forth because there was the one me exploring what I knew. And then there was the side of me that was like, but we do it this way. Right. And so we're taught to pray in a certain way. And there's a certain, ritual that you follow when you do these things. And as I got into my 20s, I really started to, I knew there was something else out there. And I went, like, it was like I went on a quest or like a soul journey. I was searching for something. And I can't tell you how many different religions or churches I walked into to experience, denominational, non-denominational, learning meditation, learning mindfulness, seeing different, gurus, all of those types of things, attempting to figure out what it was for me, what aligned with me. And in the beginning, when I left the church, per se, I stopped going to church when I was 17 regularly. I go once or twice a year when I see my mother, and, that's because I love her and it makes her feel good. Right. And I don't mind going.
Yeah.
So I can hold space for that. But in the beginning, as I went off one direction, the word God would trigger me.
Oh my God.
When my parents would say to me, you need to trust God, or you need to do this. And I was like, it's not God, it's the universe, right? It's the universe. Even divine wasn't something I used in the beginning. Nope. It was all universe, all universal laws. It was energy. It was all of these things. And so at first I would get really triggered by it, because I'd be like, you're not listening to me. You're not hearing me. Why are you preaching at me? Why are you not accepting that I am doing things differently? And then as I developed further and I learned more, I started to be able to see the parallels. And I started to realize that, okay, I sit down and meditate and I ask my guides and speak to my guides and ask them for help and assistance with whatever it is that's going on in my life. And I went, this is just a different version of prayer.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and so I'm praying regularly. I'm speaking to God. Then, the divine, coming into this idea of the divine light and the law of oneness, and really starting to understand all of that. I started to realize that I said universe, they said God. We were talking about the same things, but people get so caught up on semantics. The words that we're using will trigger us. The letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, right? And especially when we are interpreting Bible scriptures, knowing how many different versions of the Bible there is, how many different translations of the Bible there is. Are you taking the words literally, or are you feeling into the energy of the message that is meant to come through from it as a piece of guidance for your life?
Mhm. Yeah.
Because if there's one thing I learned, and funny enough, I ended up on this whole journey, I ended up teaching religion.
Of course you did.
I'm not, they're like, "Can you teach religion?" And I went, "Well, I haven't studied theology, but I got some real world experience. I've been to a lot of these, different religions. I've looked into them." And the most interesting thing was, there isn't one religion on the face of the planet that doesn't have a version of the golden rule.
Mhm.
There isn't, you know, that don't have a version of the 10 commandments,
Yeah.
which are all very similar,
Yeah.
right? They're all preaching and sharing the same message in terms of the guidelines for how to live your life.
Mhm.
They're just using different language, and people are getting caught up on that because you're not doing it my way, right? Catholicism has a lot more rituals in it than the religion I was raised in,
Yeah.
right? But it's all about that same practice of that energy of worship, of surrendering, of giving up to the divine, of forgetting, not worrying about the how, but focusing on what it is that you want, calling in the support that you need. How you're doing that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The fact is, you're leaning in and you're engaged with something that is bigger than you.
It's so true. And I literally had a client send me a message 2 days ago about this and about how she was getting triggered by the word God. And I understand, like, just like you said, I was in the same spot. So I came from Roman Catholic. We went to church every Sunday. And even as a kid, I rebelled against the like actual religion, the like having to go to an infrastructure to do something. And I didn't know consciously until I look back now and really look at it that I was rebelling against that, organization of religion, that someone was deciphering to me what that truth meant. And I had to believe that their deciphering was truth. Okay. So that was what I was rebelling against inside of the space, where if someone goes and reads the Bible and takes their own interpretation from it, it's totally different. But we also know that a lot of the Vatican and a lot of the Catholic Church created certain parts or omitted certain parts of the actual original scriptures to not speak truth, right? So there's a whole bunch of that vibration moving through. But like I was that kid that I would purposely sleep over at my friend's house on Saturday nights. And my mom would be like, "We're coming to pick you up at 11 to go to church." And I'd be like, "But mom, or I would like purposefully not get up out of bed on time and be late. She's like, "I don't give a fuck if you're going to church in your pajamas." And like I literally for years. And then at 15, she made a choice and decision to stop going to church. And I said, "Well, why? Why are you not going to church anymore?" And she's like, "Because I'm finding God in other ways." And then I went, "Well, what about me?" Right? Because now I'm like all in, right? So I literally walked to church every Sunday to this church down the street from my house. And I went to church by myself for a while. And I was that kid that people would look at and be like, "Who is this kid's parents?" Like, I was like, she's this like loner at church. And I would just go because there was a part of me that wanted to explore this now.
Mm.
And then my mom ended up finding like years later a non-denominational church, and her and my dad have so many friends in common there, and they love what that is. But it was last year she called me and she was like, "Colleen, you just have to believe in Jesus and Jesus is going to save you." And this is what I said. I was like, "Mom, I love and appreciate that if Jesus is the beaming light for you, that you put all your cards in his, like whatever, all your eggs in his basket, and you roll with Jesus and you have a great time. But mom, I was just talking to Jesus last week. Okay. Like him and I, like we led this meditation and I'm good with Jesus. Like we're on the same point, but I'm not putting all of my eggs in Jesus's basket. Like,
Yeah.
because I believe in another truth. I believe inside of us is the light that's needed in the world, and we save ourselves, right? So if we put all of our eggs in someone else's basket and just going, "Well, my pastor will teach me this," or "This is all that truth is," and we're not looking within, we're missing that alignment inside of our life, and we're missing the actual truth of our soul being awakened on earth. So
Yeah, there's two things you said there that popped for me. The one, honoring everyone's journey is different. And the one
mhm.
thing I learned was that the structure of a religion And it does. Religion provides amazing structure, and it's got the here is how you do life list, right? Which
Totally.
doesn't require you to do a lot of extra except follow the guidance that you've been given. And for some people, that is what resonates with their soul. That is what feels good for them. They like to have that structure. And when they do lean into it, and this is, my family, when they do lean into it, it brings them what they're seeking.
Hmm.
And so that works for them. Now, me having that rebel spirit in me, that didn't align with me. I mean, I was the kid who went to the ROM, and for those people who don't know, it's one of the museums in Toronto. And we went and found, like, looked at dinosaurs. I was like 7 or something at the time. And I remember coming home and going, I went to Sunday school that week and asked my Sunday school teacher, where do dinosaurs fit in the Bible?
Yeah.
Because I had gone and I had seen them and I had touched the bones. And I'm like, this is a real thing.
Yeah.
So please explain. And do you think anyone could tell me?
No.
No. So then I sat there in my little head, needing to know, how do these two things come together? And because I always had that desire to understand the things beyond what I was told, right? Organized religion did not align with me. There was too many boundaries and boxes involved. And I didn't understand that at the time,
Hmm.
but I see it very clearly now in terms of aligning with my truth, is that, there's this idea, we have to remember that organized religions are led by human beings. Yes, they may have a direct connection with God, which we all have
Yes.
within. It's the fact that some of us we don't believe we have it.
Yeah.
And therefore we seek it out in someone else to
Yeah.
tell us what to do. And I don't think it matters whether it's an organized religion or one of the many millions of gurus out there. Whatever choices you make in terms of what you're going to align yourself with needs to resonate with your soul, and it needs to come from you, right? And if there's one thing I've learned in this past year, and I thank you for supporting me on this particular journey, which is I have all the answers inside of me. My soul already knows. I don't need someone else to tell me how to run my business, how to run my life, what decisions to make, all of that. And I spent way too much time in my life listening to all of that I got lost in it. I didn't know who I was anymore.
Love.
And it's when I started to realign in that and I started to go inwards, you know, yeah, I take aspects of the religion I was raised in. I take aspects of the different spiritual practices I've learned, but I take what resonates with me and I leave the rest.
Yeah. And that's really powerful, Jacqy. Like, and my job and mission on earth is to amplify that in others, right? Like, I'm not the one, I don't want to be put on a pedestal. Like, yeah, I'll go on a stage and speak to thousands of people. Definitely, I'm in for that. But I don't want you to ever think that I'm not a human in this experience as well, going through my humanness, and that you don't have the potential within you already embedded. It's already there. Right. So, like, bringing it back around to that word God, because my client was like questioning this. So, throughout this whole time of my life, I then dropped this word God and I didn't believe in that. And when I started moving through my spiritual awakening, I used the word universe, just like you,
Yeah.
consistently all the time. And now I've moved back into the energy of God, where I can own God, universe, divine energy, spirit guides, essence, whatever it is, source, spirit, whatever it is I'm speaking into. And I can hold space for everyone wherever the levels are at, right? In connection with that. And it's just been an interesting journey, like, and it is a journey. And we're all at different places of the journey, and we're all owning different parts of us. But I think through the truth of what we've kind of brought up today is about really listening to yourself, right? And the desires you have, like everything that we talked about today is in alignment with that, from the deep shadow work and dark nights of the soul, to sexual expression, to religion and conforming in boxes, and, honoring that. It's about you and your truth.
Yes, 100%. And acknowledging that it is a process.
Mm-hmm.
And circling back to when I was in the dark night of the soul, it was a conversation I had. And I thank God, universe, divine every day for my community, because I was reminded of where I was in the process. And the moment that I knew where I was in the process, it didn't feel as heavy anymore, because what I knew, I had been through this before. So I knew the process, and I went, okay, we're here. And that's okay. We need to be here right now. There's dismantling happening. But what I do know is that there is always light at the end of the tunnel. And as long as I keep moving forward in this experience, and as long as I keep getting curious, and as long as I keep leaning in and exploring, the light gets brighter and brighter again. And, I used to say, I always come out of these things stronger, which I do believe I do, right?
Yeah.
But it really is more, it's not so much about the strength as it is about the power.
Mm-hmm.
And that being two very different things for me, in terms of being able to stand in my power and my truth on a whole new level, which felt like strength to me in the past,
Right.
right? To be able to step in and be bold and courageous and own where I'm at, knowing, you know, there's none of us that get to escape the ups and downs of the human experience. The difference now being, I felt some major energy shifts the other day, and it started to trigger feelings of what I acknowledged in my past of anxiety.
Mm.
And the difference now was, I didn't I felt the symptoms of anxiety.
Yeah.
And so I dropped in and went, is this mine?
Yeah.
And I knew immediately it wasn't, and it was just an energy that I was experiencing, and therefore I was able to shift it.
Right.
And I didn't have to own that. And it's this now, the biggest difference from going through this before and what I've done now is that I'm choosing what I own.
Mm-hmm.
What is me? What is mine? What am I going to take on? How am I going to show up based on what I own?
Yeah.
And I own it.
Yeah. It is you.
Yes.
Yeah, it is you. Yeah. And I think that this is such a powerful statement, and it's like one of those things that if we could encourage everybody on listening to this, take ownership of one thing today. One thing. What is the purity of light you want to move through today? What is it that you want to own, and step into that? And then tomorrow, maybe it'll be another thing because you're ready to move through that. But I think that the energy of procrastination and the energy of lack of clarity is a dominant energy right now, and even doubt inside of
Yes.
this space, doubt we can do this. It's about proving to yourself every day that you can. And once you keep collapsing that narrative and you keep moving through, it gets easier and easier and easier, right? We've been through stuff in our life. You and I have been through numerous, adventures, we're going to say. And it's
Experience.
not like they stop. Like, it's every level you get to new ones, and it gets to move through a different ways. So being available for that and recognizing it's just another phase. Okay, we're moving through this. And will we ever be done? Doubtful, because welcome to Earth, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the human experience, and it's honoring all parts of that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
when life gets lifey, as I like to say, or my one of my coaches used to say to me, it's celebrating the humanness of it, because we can be as divinely connected and supported and all of that, and it doesn't mean that you get to escape those human parts. And there was a part of me while I was going through all of this that went, you're a coach, you have all the tools, you've been on this journey forever, you know what's happening to you. And yet it was like I was so stuck
Yeah.
that it didn't matter that I had all of those things.
Yeah.
I was having a human experience, and if I had have leaned into the tools, I may not have gotten to the level of awareness I needed to go to that depth.
Mm-hmm.
And tools are fantastic, and I, after this experience, hope, set the intention that when I need to up level again, we will make it a little bit easier and with a little bit more grace, and that I will dive faster into it so I can come out of it faster, rather than needing to go there kicking and screaming, which was my ammo for years, right? This
Yeah.
resistance is real. I will tell you though that the more you resist, or whatever you resist, it will persist. And if it's for you, if it's for you to have this experience, if it's part of what your soul came here to do, you're not escaping it.
Yeah. No, you're not at all, for sure. This has been really great. So, obviously, in the show notes, we're going to have all of your contact details and stuff where people can reach you. But what do you got going on right now that people may be inclined to connect with you? I know that you're in a transition in your business of really owning who you are because of all the experience you've been through and really, moving your brand in a way that is fully aligned with your light and your soul's mission on earth. But just
Mm.
whatever's coming to your heart, just share with us now.
So I think, it's funny. At the end of last year at the equinox
Mm-hmm.
or the winter solstice, I got this drop down of Soul Truth Illuminator. And I went, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah.
And what am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
Right? Like having no idea. And as I moved through my journey, piece by piece, it started to make more sense in terms of what I'm here to support people with. Because now as you always say, I go first,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I had this journey over the last few months of really needing to dive in and reevaluate everything in my life, every box I'd ever put myself in, everything I had ever been told or taught, all of my belief systems, to begin to really figure out who am I
Mm-hmm.
and who am I here to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm I desire to be able to support people coming out of what feels like the chaos, what feels like being lost and alone, because I would not have come out of this as successfully as I had if I had not had the community around me. So I have a strong desire to really build a community of people who are awakening, who desire to have this journey in. They know that they're meant for more. They know that there's more out there. They know that they're being held back,
Mm-hmm.
to help them start to bust open these boxes.
Yeah.
Like, let's blow them up,
Yeah.
because it's through that process of really beginning to do the deep dive with you. And I would not have been able to go to the depths that I went to without support.
Yeah.
And now, because I've experienced it, I can now support others going to those depths so that they can get there, get in, get out, get your learnings, right? And let's start getting you on a path that feels good for you, that you're excited to show up for,
Yeah.
that, is driven from that passion place. And we can do it real quick, like quite quickly, or we can, work together for a while. So for the time being, I am offering I can't remember what I called it now, soul illumination journey. It's an
Yeah.
hour. Come hang out with me. It's $111, right? Like, let's do a deep dive into your soul to get the answers from you.
Yeah.
I'm just the tour guide. That's it. I'm going to guide you there, because not all of us know how to go there
Yeah.
or feel safe going there.
Yeah.
So my desire is to provide a safe space where people can start to really get to know and remember who they really are.
Yeah. And if you're hearing this and let's say this podcast launched like a year ago or whatever, I would just encourage you and you're feeling all this to reach out to Jacqy because who knows what journey she'll be on by then, but I'm sure she'll have something else that's juicy as fuck for you to be able to bite into at that time in moving through. So I always encourage everyone to share this podcast out because it creates the ripple effect. And the desire of this whole entire podcast dropped in because of that, helping light warriors find information that will help them move through and spread their light more into the world. But I want to leave everybody with this last thought from you, Jacqy. Like, what are you really feeling on your heart to share out there for all these people that are moving through this next level of energy or, really finding out who the fuck they are or stepping into the space? Like, what would you want to say to them if you were to conclude this podcast with this thought?
Surrender is the liberation you've been seeking.
Mm-hmm.
Lean in, get curious, and you never know what you're going to find.
Yes, love it. Well, I think that's a really great way to conclude this masterpiece. So I just want to thank you, obviously, from my heart center to yours, for jumping on and sharing with me on a whim and for being available to all the craziness that we talk about and being here in transparency. And for all of you guys listening, thank you for listening and being here with us as well. And we're just so grateful that we get to be in alignment with you.
Thank you. Thank you
All right,
very much.
welcome. We'll see you guys again soon. Bye for now.